Wealth starts in your mindset. It doesn't start in your bank account. You have to wholeheartedly believe that you are going to become wealthy, because if you don't, it's going to be impossible. When you say money is bad, but then you're stressing about your bills, there's a disconnect there. Money is not good. Money is not bad. It just amplifies who you are. If you want to live a happy and fulfilled life, you have to be fit in 4 different areas of life. You can be in charge of your own destiny if you're willing to put in the work. This requires that discipline to, number 1, believe it's possible, the education to understand this, and then actually executing it. Spiritual fitness, which doesn't have to be religious, it's what's your purpose? What is your reason for getting out of bed every single morning? Many people think that if I just have money, that it's going to give me purpose, but it doesn't work like that. Your purpose is its own thing. And then at the very top, you have the financial fitness. Your financial fitness is what gives you the financial freedom to do more of the things that you love. But it can also destroy those things if you don't have the money. So how do you attract the money without giving up your soul and without giving up everything else in your life? I'll dig a little bit deeper on how you can do that. There's a few mindsets that I'd like to discuss. Number 1 is that I will become wealthy. Number 2 is money as a tool. And number 3 is that money is abundant. Starting with I will become wealthy. The reason why I say it like that, I will become wealthy, not that I can become wealthy, is because wealth starts in your mindset. It doesn't start in your bank account. And if you don't believe that somebody like you can become wealthy because of the way you grew up, the way you look, your ethnicity, or whatever circumstances you've been dealt, I can guarantee you're never going to have that wealth for yourself. And so you have to believe, and I mean wholeheartedly believe, that you are going to become wealthy, because if you don't, it's going to be impossible. And I'll dig a little bit deeper into that in just a minute on how you can do that. Number 2 is that money is abundant. And what I mean by that is what happens to a lot of people is you start your financial education journey, you start to think about investing and how can I earn more money and how do I use my money smartly. And then you get into this sometimes envy where it's, if this person's making money, that means it's money that I can't have. If I'm paying you, you're getting rich, I'm not. And this is where it starts to create a little bit of these negative emotions around money. But what I'd like to kind of emphasize here is that there's a lot of money in the world. There's a lot of dollars in the world. All you need is a small little sliver of that, and it could change your life drastically, and your kids' lives and your grandkids' lives. And so remember that there's a lot of money out there, and it's not a competition of, the reason why a lot of people think of this money being limited is because growing up, what do we fight for? We fight for attention. And so if you have siblings, if your brother or sister is getting the attention, you're not getting it. And so when you fight for that attention, it's all or nothing in a sense, because there's a finite amount of attention somebody can give you. But when it comes to money, it's not like that. You don't have to be a winner and a loser. You could be a winner and a winner. And so it's a very difficult concept, and it's very unique. But that's one of the things that's unique about money, is that you have the ability to build wealth and see other people build wealth. And the third part is that money is a tool. And what I mean by this is that money is not good. Money is not bad. More money doesn't make you a good person. More money doesn't make you a bad person. It just amplifies who you are. If you give a good person more money, they have a tool to do more good. If you give a bad person more money, they have a tool to do more bad. Many times I know in our native Punjabi culture, there's a big taboo around money. And what that means is there's a lot of people that talk about money. It's bad, it's evil, you shouldn't talk about money, don't stress about money. Yet at the same time, every single person is going to work to get paid to pay your bills. And so when you say money is bad, but then you're stressing about your bills, there's a disconnect there. And this is where you got to understand it costs money to eat. It costs money to feed other people. Money is something that is necessary to be able to live a fulfilling and free life. So how do you attract the money without giving up your soul and without giving up everything else in your life? So I would say start with those 3, understanding that number 1, I will become wealthy. Number 2, money is abundant. And number 3, money is a tool.
I really appreciate each of those, and there's so much to dive into each around those. But just where you left off just then, I just want to pick that up for a sec, because there is a stress that is created in our lives when we feel that way about money. Like you said, it's like money is just a tool, right? But if we feel negatively around money and we're going out and working for it, then so much of our day trading of our time for energy for money, which we will talk about why that it may not be the optimum strategy, but day trading our time for money, you know, we are going to be doing it to support ourselves, our living. We live in a capitalistic structure. It's pretty hard to escape the system. And it is the best model we've got thus far. Maybe there are new models coming. I don't know. Maybe you know. But in that space, we've got to like, yeah, just the stress that that causes on a personal level. Like, can you speak to that a little bit? I'm sure other people have asked you something around that, right? Like, if you're feeling like money is evil and you're showing up every day for something that you feel is evil, like a necessary evil.
Well, I think there's a couple parts to that. The first part is money bad? And you got to remember, why do you have, or understand, why do you have this negative association with money? And many times it's because of the way that we were raised. If your parents, when you were young, told you rich people are evil, we can't afford nice things, we can't have nice things, that's too much money, what do you think is going to be associated in your mindset when you think of money? That people who have money are bad, that wealthy people are evil, that I will never be able to have these nice and expensive things because that's for rich people. Rich people are bad and I can't do that. So you
But it
create this
also,
righteousness.
I don't want to interrupt there, but it also is pretty insidious because you look like the what you hear in the news and media of the wealthy in particular, because there's so many rich people that aren't corrupt, but especially in our culture, brother, like you look, you know, what you hear in the news all the time is like, oh, such and such, you know, corruption and such corruption. You're like, oh, people that play at those levels with big money end up corrupt, and you're like, oh, money corrupts. Do you know what I mean? That's also part of the story as well. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just want to add a point.
Absolutely. There are rich people that are corrupt. There are poor people that are corrupt. There are middle class people that are corrupt. The people that get the attention are the rich people because they're the ones that are going to get the headlines. And so, I mean, the reality is there are good people and bad people at every income level. There are good people and bad people in every culture, in every religion, in every facet of the world. But of course, some are going to take more headlines than others because the media loves getting clicks, and that's what they're good at. And so the first thing is, you got to just understand money is a tool. It is a part of our lives. And so if we have this mindset that money is evil, ask yourself why. And why is it evil for you? If you were given $1 million today, are you going to turn into a horrible person and just do a lot of bad things? Or do you have a tool to help out other people and help out your family and help out your finances? And this is where now, if you start to get to that realization that, oh, you know what? More money would actually benefit me where I am in my situation. I'd be able to buy something for my kids. I'd be able to get something for my husband or my wife. I'd be able to take better care of my parents who are sick. This is where that understanding that, there are some bad people out there, rich people. There are some bad people out there, poor people. There are some bad people out there that are middle class. But I want to have that money so I can have the financial freedom. Because what I talk about is what I call the quadruped theory, that if you want to live a happy and fulfilled life, you have to be fit in 4 different areas of life. You have to be physically fit, you have to be mentally fit, you have to be spiritually fit, and you have to be financially fit. Now, physically fit means being healthy. You don't have to have a six-pack, but if you're morbidly obese, all you want is to be healthy again. When you're sick, all you want is to be healthy. That's the only thing that's on your mind. If you're not mentally fit, if you're depressed, if you're anxious, if you're surrounded by toxic people that are constantly bringing you down, you gotta improve that mental state. And sometimes the unfortunate part is many people believe that if I just had $1 million, I'll find the love of my life, that all these good things are gonna happen to me. I'm gonna be happy. People are gonna chase behind me and like me. And the unfortunate reality is, if you have that mindset and you achieve that money, you're going to end up more miserable than you were in the first place because you realize that the money didn't solve the problem and now you're at a big black hole. And so understanding that physical fitness is its own level, the mental fitness is its own level, then there's a spiritual fitness, which doesn't have to be religious. It's what's your purpose? What is your reason for getting up out of bed every single morning? What is that thing that gets you excited? Which, again, many people think that if I just have money, that it's going to give me purpose, but it doesn't work like that. Your purpose is its own thing. And then at the very top, you have the financial fitness. It's separate. Your financial fitness is what gives you the financial freedom to do more of the things that you love. And sure, that financial fitness can allow you to do more things to give you the physical fitness. You get better gym memberships, eat better food, get better trainers, get a chef, do whatever you want. It can improve your mental fitness. It can get you better therapists. It can get you better help. It can improve your spiritual fitness because now you have the ability to travel and meet more people and help more people. But it can also destroy those things if you don't have the money. If you don't have money, it can destroy your physical fitness because now you're eating at McDonald's and Burger King all day, every day. It can destroy your mental fitness because you're always stressed about money. Money issues are one of the leading causes of suicide and divorce in America. It can destroy your spiritual fitness because if you're constantly stressed about your bills, you can lose your sense of purpose. And so understanding they're all intertwined, but it's separate at the same time. Your physical fitness, your mental fitness, your spiritual fitness are separate than your financial fitness, and having more money is going to allow you to be a more financially fit person, but it's an important part of living a fulfilled life.
I think when you speak to the other three dimensions, like the physical and the emotional, and the spiritual, and the key thing around that, they feel very much within our control to some degree. You can argue maybe spirit requires a little bit of grace, but for the most part, that you can work on your practices. You can for someone like myself, work on your meditations, go to Gurdwara, and you can start to really understand certain things, but I think for some people, feeling into it, and maybe this comes back to the "I will become wealthy." For some people, financial doesn't quite feel like it's in their control, and this is what I love about minority mindset the most, which is just like, oh my god, it just you've just got your hands just end up back on the reins in a really powerful way. But obviously, I will at some point stop evangelizing the channel. But yeah, like the control piece, because do you get that? Like a lot of people feel like financial fitness is actually beyond their control, whereas it really is within their control, right? Can you just elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think you similarly have people that believe their physical fitness is out of their control, that, because of genetics, because of whatever, that I can't be healthy or healthier, that my mental fitness is out of my control because I had gone through certain tragedies, certain traumas that have impacted my mental health, that your spiritual fitness is out of control for a number of reasons, that your soul is impacted or whatever is going on with that. I'm a firm believer that you can be in charge of your own destiny if you're willing to put in the work. That's for physical fitness, mental fitness, spiritual fitness, and financial fitness, because I've seen it in every single one of these happen. Doesn't mean it's easy. You got to be willing to bust your butt, but it is possible if you are willing to put in the work, if you are willing to learn, if you are willing to try, and if you're willing to fail. It's not easy, but if you stick with it, you're going to see improvement. And when you see improvement, you know that there's light at the end of the tunnel, and you just got to stick with it. And it's just like with anything else. To see success in anything, whether it's with your body, with your mind, with your spirit, with your money, it's a long-term game. But a lot of times we get sucked up into the in finance, we call it the get-rich-quick schemes, because nobody wants to get rich slowly. And so what do? You start looking for what's the next hot stock that I should dump my money into? What's the next cryptocurrency or thing that I should dump my money into that's going to make me a lot of money very quickly? What's the next quick business that can make me $10,000 a month passively? We're looking for those quick fixes, when in reality, those quick fixes are what's keeping you back. Those quick fixes are what's keeping you broke financially. And the reality is, building wealth, real sustainable wealth, is not a very attractive thing. If somebody at the age of 21 took $100 every single month and they invested it into the stock market, into the S&P 500, they did that every month from the age of 21 until 66, the numbers show us that you would retire a millionaire with $100 a month. Now, why is that not actually being done? because you can't show off your stock market portfolio the way you can a BMW. You can't show off that investment portfolio the way you can a Rolex. You can't show it off the way you can a trip to Cancun or Ibiza or somewhere else on Instagram. And so when you put your money into the markets, we're talking about decades when that BMW gives you the instant gratification. And so what's the point? YOLO. And then everybody says, well, Jaspreet, I don't want $1 million. That's not enough. What's the point of only having $1 million? It's so you don't have $0 when you're 66. And remember what I said, this is $100 a month for the next 45, 46 years. As you make more money, you can also invest more money. If next year you invest $110 a month, the year after that you do $125 a month, the year after that you do $150 a month, you're not going to have $1 million. You'll have millions of dollars.
Hey there, guys. This conversation is about the mindset of financial abundance. And I know it's a really incredible one. We're about to dive in even deeper into the different mindsets around money and what is the best investment that you can make in yourself and in the world. As always, we're having spiritual mindset-oriented conversations here on the channel every week. Two podcasts come out every week, and everything you see around here is powered and empowered by your subscription to the channel. So if you can do us a massive favor, if you haven't already subscribed, please do subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much in advance for your incredible love and support. And for those of you that are subscribed to the channel, thank you so much for doing so. Really, it helps, like I said, everything around here. Without too much further ado, today's episode.
But this requires the discipline to, number one, believe it's possible, the education to understand this, and then actually executing it. Even during times where you see craziness, during times where you see a recession, during times where you see market crashes, because in the United States, we have seen a recession or a market crash every decade for the last century, sometimes multiple. Yet despite that, we have seen the stock market rise by 10% a year on average. Not that it goes up 10% every year, but on average, despite the downturns, despite the market crashes, despite the recessions, it has still gone up by around 10% a year on average. But this is where that discipline lies, the education lies, the willing to stick with it lies, and the long-term thinking, which is difficult. And if you can stick with something, if you can continue learning, if you're willing to put in the work, when everybody else is partying, when everybody else is blowing their money, when you're doing something that the majority of people are not doing, that's why I call it the minority mindset, not because you have to look different, it's thinking differently. If you keep doing what everybody else does, you're going to end up like everybody else. And today, the majority of people are broke, the majority of people are unhappy, the majority of people are fat, and the majority of people are unfulfilled. And I don't say this in a general term, I mean this statistically, that more than 50% of people are each one of these things. And so if you don't want to live like everybody else, you can't keep doing what everybody else does. And when it comes to your money, that means number one, stop spending all of your money. Number two, make yourself rich before you make everybody else rich. And our economic system is designed to benefit investors. It is not designed to benefit the employee. It is not designed to benefit the consumer. We're never taught this in school. I had to learn this the hard way. But if you understand this, you can use the system to your advantage instead of being the one that gets screwed over by the system.
Can you break that down for us a little bit? Because, what I mean is like bringing us back to yourself at university. Just you've stepped into university, and you were, you sort of saw everybody going along to these parties, and you found a different way to party.
Yeah, so I grew up in a very traditional Indian house. My family's from a state in India called Punjab. I know you are as well. And growing up, my parents gave me two options. They said, Jaspreet, you can either become a doctor or you can be a failure. You pick which one you want. And so me being the good kid I was.
Can relate. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, it's reality. Like since the day I turned 1, my parents had told everybody from India to America to everywhere in between that Jaspreet is going to be a doctor. And I believed that wholeheartedly. And I did everything that I could to go into medical school, kind of go down that route. I had this like entrepreneurial itch, but I had to, every time I had like an urge to kind of start a side hustle or a business when I was in high school, I had to do it in secret because my parents were always very discouraging of it. They said, this is bad, focus on becoming a doctor. Well, I go to college, I don't drink. Everybody around me is partying. I didn't realize people go to college or university to party. That was news to me. And now I need something to do on Friday nights because everybody's blowing money they don't have on these parties. And that really wasn't my scene. So I decided to start hosting the parties that people went to. So that was my first real entrepreneurial venture. And it started off rough, but it started to grow. And then I started to make a little bit of money while I was in college. That was the first shock for me because I didn't realize that I was allowed to make money without some license or degree because I didn't know that that was possible. Then I started reading books, or around that time, I was also reading books about money management and investing. And I started learning about this thing called investing and cash flow. And I had never heard of these things before. Nobody in my family was a real estate investor. Nobody in my family was talking about this. So, like, this was not something that I'd ever been exposed to in my life. So now I'm reading about this thing called investing and financial education. And I was like, wait, you're telling me that wealthy people don't make their money because they've got a good job, they got a good degree and making this big salary. They're making their money because they own these investments that are making them money. I was shocked. I'm like, dude, I've been doing so good in school. I've been busting my butt because I thought that the better grades I got, the more money that I would make. And so I was trying to do everything right. I was checking all the boxes. I was trying to do everything by the book because I wanted to become successful so I can give back to my parents. What I didn't realize was I was playing a completely different game than what wealthy people do. And so that was when I started changing. When I was in college, I then started to take the money that I was making and I started investing it. I was fortunate enough to start investing in real estate when I was in college through the money that I was making from my event planning company. I was fortunate because this was after the 2008 real estate crash here in America. So real estate prices were selling for huge discounts. So I was able to buy some properties at, record low prices.
Yeah,
I didn't realize it was...
Yeah, I remember you bought something really cheap, I remember at some point, yeah.
Yeah, the first property that I purchased, it had previously sold for $150,000. It went through foreclosure. The banks couldn't get rid of it. They sold it to me. The bank sold it to me for $8,000. That was the total price of the condo. Again, I was 19. I had no idea if that was a good deal or bad deal. That was just my first time ever seeing a deal.
It was just a deal you could afford.
It was just a deal that I could afford. I was so naive. I made a lot of mistakes, but that was kind of my introduction into this world of financial education. And so I did more of that. I started to learn more. And then I started to generate this cash flow from my rental properties because now these properties are paying me rent while I'm going to college. And I was realizing that, I can own these assets, these investments, and then they can make me money even when I'm not working. I had never understood or even seen that concept before. And this is when I started to really understand or start to learn more about financial education. And I realized this entire system that we're taught, go to school, get good grades, become a doctor, become an attorney, become something, make a big salary. That's not the way wealthy people become wealthy. They become wealthy because they work to invest their money. They become wealthy because they work to own assets, and then they let their assets pay for their lifestyles. We're taught to make money and then use the money we make from our jobs to pay for our lifestyles. But that's not the game that wealthy people are playing. Not just that, our economic system is designed to benefit investors. What do I mean? Well, we all know what inflation is now. I began talking about inflation when I started making videos on YouTube back in 2015, 2016. I used to go around the country and ask people, what is inflation? Because nobody knew what it was back in 2016. Well, inflation didn't start after the pandemic. It started a long time ago. And inflation means that when you go to buy your groceries, it costs you more dollars. Inflation hurts consumers. And we know that inflation is a part of our economic system. It has been happening for decades and it's going to continue happening. Even our central bank in the United States, it's called the Federal Reserve Bank. They say publicly that they want 2% inflation. They don't say they want 0% inflation. They don't say that they want negative inflation to bring the prices of things down. They say that they want 2% inflation because that's low enough that the average person doesn't notice it day by day. And that's kind of how life was before the pandemic. There was low inflation, not no inflation. It was low enough that the average person didn't really care. But it affects you year after year after year because if you take a look at how things have become more expensive over the decades, you'll see that The average person is becoming poorer because of inflation. But investors are getting richer because inflation inflates the value of investments. It increases the prices of things, but it decreases the value of your salary. Inflation means that your salary doesn't stretch as far. The $50,000 you might be making or whatever your salary is cannot buy you as much stuff when you have more inflation because the value of your currency, of your dollar, is going down. But that inflation is also what has caused housing prices to rise, real estate investments to rise, stock market values to rise. So we know inflation benefits investors. It doesn't benefit consumers. And we also know that the tax code is designed to benefit investors. How do I know this? Because when I told my parents that I wasn't going to be a doctor, my dad said, Jaspreet, you better go to law school to keep some pride in the family at the very least. So my dad and I had a compromise, and I went to law school part-time so I could work on my business full-time. And while I was in law school, I spent a lot of my time studying real estate tax, business tax, and just general investment tax. And what I learned is that the tax code gives special tax breaks and special tax rates to investors. But when you make that money from a job, you don't get those. So if I work a job, if I work a job and I make $100,000 a year, I'm going to pay more in taxes than if I made that same $100,000 from my investments, because that's what the tax code says. And if you earn even more money, well, it's even worse. And this is where now understanding, hey, this economic system is designed to benefit investors. This economic system is designed to benefit the financially educated. And we're not taught this financial education. We're taught to just go through the system. But if you want to become wealthy, you have to learn these things on your own. And unfortunately, that's going to require your own education, your own financial education in order to do that. That's one of the reasons I started Briefs Media. So a lot of people know me for the minority mindset. I make videos on YouTube and my podcast, Minority Mindset. This is what most people know me for. But my full-time job is actually running a company called Briefs Media. We have free, like we talk about the free financial newsletter, Market Briefs, where we break down the financial news. And we also try to help spread this financial education through our educational platforms and through our financial trends analysis, because we want to show people what's happening in the markets in plain English. Because for somebody like me that didn't grow up with financial education, when I would go and try to learn what's happening in the markets, they give me this confusing news. They say the 10-year treasury has fallen by 50 basis points. What does that mean? For the average person, it doesn't mean anything because you don't understand it. And so my whole mission with this company is to help people be better with money by breaking it down into plain English, because a lot of people, if you got an MBA, if you had a financial background, yeah, maybe you understand it. But for the average person, you don't know what's going on in the world in terms of money. So our goal now with Market Briefs and Briefs Media is to break that down to plain English. And that's my full-time job, and Minority Mindset is my hobby. So it's kind of funny how that kind of played full circle.
Quick question, guys. What is the number one mindset piece that you're taking away to building your financial abundance and wealth from today's conversation? I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Back to the episode. Interestingly, a question I want to ask you just from a personal level, which I don't know if this is fair to bring into the podcast, but you know, there would have been, I think our families come from the best of intentions, right? It's like become a doctor, or, you know, they push us into law, and they come from the best of places. And, you know, there's so much of that I think now more and more people, or maybe it's just the ecosystem around the inspired evolution and the minority mindset, where people are starting to wake up a little bit around, hey, you know, the world that we're inhabiting is very different to the world that our parents inhabited. And so, you know, I think it started even just very I'll share this with you really quickly. I remember when I was, because I got my engineering degree, right? So I that was one of my options, was if not doctor, if not lawyer, then engineer. And so
that's usually the trio.
Yeah, that is the trifecta, isn't it? And so in there, I remember when I got my degree, And I had this opportunity to become a design engineer, or I had the opportunity to become a like a construction engineer, which is like construction engineers are out there building stuff, design engineers are designing the drawings and having a look at that sort of thing. And construction engineering is like you work 6 days a week, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. It's 12 hours a day, long days. It's a bit of a slog. Whereas design engineering is 9 to 5. It's a bit more white collar, very clean, that sort of stuff. And I remember going to my dad, and I said, my dad, immigrated to Australia, so very immigrant. That sounds rude, very immigrant, but he immigrated, worked very hard, is probably what I wanted to say. And his thing was always, I worked hard so that you would work smart. And I brought to him the conversation when I was offered two really great jobs, and I was like, "Hey, Dad, this job here for being in construction pays me $100,000 a year, whereas this job here in being a design engineer pays me about $60,000 a year. But in construction, I'm working like almost like a 70-hour week, maybe a little bit more. Whereas in design, I'm working like a 40-hour week." And my hourly pay in construction works out to be like $27.50, whereas my pay in design is roughly about $42 an hour. And my dad looks at me and he goes, "Amrit, who thinks like that?" And I was like, "Sorry, what?" And he goes, "Who's paying you more?" and, and, and at that point, I had this realization, because he always used to say, "I worked hard so you'd work smart." And it was almost too early on for me. I was only like 22, 23, like it was just, maybe a little bit older. But it was this really interesting point where I was like, like I'm evaluating things differently to how my father evaluates things. And with the best of his intentions, this is where he's guiding me. And it's always been a blessing, and he's coming from the best place possible. But also, the world we're inhabiting is quite a different world. And, I think coming from the place of best intentions, so many people's expectations guide us, so many people's wants for us guide us. And yet, building out something that's uniquely for us, it can be so hard to find that thing. And like, lo and behold, I went with what my dad advised. I went into the construction thing. It wasn't in alignment with what I felt was the best for me. Like later on down the track, but you go by what you're guided by. I'm not blaming him in any way. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have the inspired evolution. But yeah, back to that point, like the best of intentions, the people that love us. I think it's really interesting how treacherous that can be sometimes.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, everything my parents did, it was all out of love. It's just, if you don't have that financial education, all you can teach is what you know. You can't teach something you don't know. And most people don't understand how money works. Most people don't understand how financial education works. Most people don't understand how building wealth works. And so when you talk about generational wealth, the real generational wealth is passed down of knowledge and education. And the reason why so many wealthy families lose that wealth by the third generation is because that knowledge gets lost by the third generation. By then, it's just somebody who has a lot of money in the bank account that they got in a trust fund, and then they blow, and now the fourth generation has no money. You start it all over again. And so it's that knowledge more than anything else. It's the same reason why you talk about poverty. Why do so many people say poverty is generational? It's not because you have this DNA or gene that says you're not allowed to build any wealth. It's because if you grow up in a household where you're told that you can't become wealthy, you can't become successful, that you grew up in a bad area, that because of all these bad circumstances, you can't become wealthy, you're going to pass the same thing down to your kids. It's a broke mindset. And so if you can change the mindset, you can change the opportunity, especially today. Opportunities today are unlike anything we've ever seen before. Whether you are in the United States or Australia or in a village in India, you have access to the internet nowadays. And the internet has changed the game to how you can learn, to how you can do things as well. And it has opened up the doors for opportunities. It doesn't make it easier, but it does make it more accessible. And so now for somebody who wants to be able to do that, the person that has that drive and the real ambition, the opportunity is right in front of you. For the others, you're going to get left behind.
It is a really interesting landscape that we live in. And I think there's some things about, back to what you were saying, which I've learnt this from watching your channel for so long, that, and this is, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, somewhere along here, but the mental model that I've got is I'm trying to almost build out a paper model of myself, and by paper I mean cash money green paper model of myself, which can actually go out and build things and generate income on my behalf whilst I'm resting, sleeping, not doing the things that I need to engage my time and energy with. And I literally call it the cash money version, like not cash money, but the paper version of myself, because I need to invest the paper into that space to build that avatar out in some ways. And that's my investment, right? And so if I invest into that person, into that pseudo avatar, and this is just a mental model for me, that guy's going to go to work instead of this guy having to go to work to trade time and energy for money. Does that model make sense?
It's 100% right. What you got to do, I mean, the way that building wealth works is you take money, instead of spending it, you buy a money-making machine, an investment. Now, it's not so simple that it's just going to print money for you, but the concept is that you're going to buy this asset, this investment, and then the goal is for this to make money. Now, the next thing somebody listening to this is going to say, well, Jaspreet, every time we put my money in the stock market, the markets go down and I lose money. And so this is where now we have to dissect this a little bit more and understand the first part, which is, what is your goal? Is your goal to make cash flow, or is your goal to see growth? Cash flow is where you get paid. Money is deposited into your account without you selling your investment. Growth is the value of your investment goes up, and then you only get paid when you sell. For me, my goal is cash flow because that's just what makes sense to me. That's what I understand. I want to have that money in my pocket because then I can spend that money on whatever I want. And so my goal as cash flow started off by investing in real estate. I talked about the first condo that I invested in. Well, I started to grow that, and I realized that if every property that I own can pay me $250 a month in profit every unit, that means if I can purchase 10 units, that's $2,500 a month in income that happens without me going to work. If I can own 100 units, that's $25,000 a month in passive cash flow that I can earn just from my rental properties. Now, this is where everybody will say, well, Jaspreet, the real estate is not passive. There's a lot of work. There is a lot of work. But once you understand the game, it's much more passive. In the beginning, it was the biggest stressor of my life because I had no idea what I was doing. I had bad property managers, bad contractors, bad tenants. I was getting bad calls from the city. I mean, it was a pain in the butt, and I was losing money. And it was hard and it was stressful. But once I started to, once I learned, after you go through that hurdle, you got to go through this just painful hurdle. When you do anything, you got to go through this painful hurdle. Once you pass that, it becomes so much easier because then you could find a good property manager who's going to do all your day-to-day work. You can find a good contractor that can do the work for you. You can find good tenants because you have a good system. You can have a good accountant. You can have a good attorney. You can learn how to deal with these issues. But you got to be able to go through the headache and go through the stress and go through that learning curve. Now, I'm very fortunate that I have a good team. My work nowadays in my rental portfolio is I review the monthly reports that my property manager sends me every month. I review the quarterly reports every 3 months. And then I analyze it every year. I don't know who my tenants are. They don't know who I am. I don't do any of the day-to-day stuff. I have a property manager who deals with all of that. I'm just reviewing the work that they do to make sure that things are done right. And so, you got to understand what the game is. It's the same thing in the stock market. In the stock market, some companies pay out what's called a dividend. A dividend is a cash payment that you get for doing nothing except owning the stock. And they're generally paid out quarterly, meaning every 3 months. So if you were to go out and invest in a stock, well, now you're going to get some money deposited into your account every 3 months for doing nothing except owning the stock. And then when everybody says, well, which stock should I buy? And then they start researching best dividend stocks, and then they start buying those stocks. And then what happens is you might end up buying a bad stock because you didn't know how to analyze that stock. And so now the stock starts to go down. Maybe the dividend's not the best. And now you get stressed and confused. You thought it was going to be this simple sunshine and rainbows. You bought this dividend paying stocks and then you'd have income. And now what happened? And now you start to learn, should I start analyzing the company a little bit better? How do I analyze the company? Maybe instead of buying a company, instead of buying a dividend stock, I can buy a fund. Because if I invest in one stock, if I invest in the Amazon company, because I think it's going to take over the world and then they go bankrupt, all my money is gone. But if I invest in a fund that has the sole goal of paying dividends, and there are 500 companies in this fund, and then one of the companies goes bankrupt, it's balanced out by the other 499. And then that fund will kick out that company and put another one in, so it's much more passive. And this is that education. And now I'm going to take a pause here, and I'm just going to let anybody who's listening to this, if you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed, I'm going to break it down right here, as simple as possible. If you wanted to get in shape and you wanted to build this nice physique, it is very easy to get caught up into the fitness side of rabbit holes. Should I go keto? Should I go carnivore? Should I go vegan? Should I go paleo? What diet should I do? And what exercises should I do? Should I be doing high intensity exercises? Should I be doing yoga? Should I be doing CrossFit? Should I be doing weight training, resistance? It can be very overwhelming, which holds people back. But the best way for you to now build and start this journey is to put down the donuts, put down the Twinkies, put down the desserts, and walk on a treadmill. Once you do that, now you can see maybe you should run on a treadmill. Maybe you should lift weights. Maybe you should add this or change this in your diet, right? It's baby steps. And so it can be very overwhelming, but all you got to do is put down the donuts and get on a treadmill. Once you do that, now you start to optimize. It's the same with your money. Start by stopping the stupid spending. Stop financing things that you don't need. Pay down the credit card debts. And I use this money to, number one, build some savings for you, and then just start investing a little bit. Just start somewhere. Find some companies that you spend money on. Maybe spend a little bit of money there on those investments. Maybe invest in the S&P 500. Maybe invest in a total stock market ETF. Just get started, because now what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to learn. And now you can start learning about ETFs. You can start learning about mutual funds and index funds. You can start learning about the different options out there. It's going to seem like a foreign world right now, which it is. But the best way to start is just to get started.
And there is something to be said for, it's a very different education you get from learning a bunch of stuff online versus actually putting your money into the space. One of the things that was really huge for me was even just learning that there are degrees of passivity. I think these get-rich money schemes online really get us, because we have this, like, there's this thing that's pitched to us as like 100% passive. And what I've come to have to learn is just actually, there's just degrees of passivity, right? There's nothing really that's 100% passive. Maybe ETFs are like 85% passive. Real estate, I would say, is maybe like 65% passive. Online media creatorship, I would say, is 50% passive. Like, it takes a lot of energy to create content like this. But then, someone is watching my content while I sleep. And potentially, maybe there's some revenue that's coming from that as well. So I think introducing that also inoculated me against sort of scams a lot as well, if I can be honest. Understanding that there are degrees of passivity. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I think the question is, why do you want it to be so passive in the first place? I mean, of course, there's a lot of scams out there. A lot of the get-rich-quick schemes are making one person rich, and it's only the person that's selling you that scam. Now, the question is, what does an ideal life look like for you? Why do you want everything to be so passive? Because I think what ends up happening, kind of like what you were saying, is you get caught up into this grind, this corporate grind. You do something you hate, and all you want is some freedom. And so, sure, now you have, let's just say you have $1 million in the bank that just suddenly appeared there. Now you have the freedom. Now what are you going to do? Okay, let's travel the world. Travel the world for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. Eventually you're going to say, okay, like I did this traveling thing. Well, what else? I mean, if you really just love the idea of traveling, then you can create a travel blog. You can create a travel YouTube channel. I mean, you can do things around there. But what is it that really gets you excited? What is it that's going to get you motivated and working? Like I love what I do. I work a lot, but I love what I do. And I was talking about this with a friend of mine. He was in the office the other day. He was talking about, like what would retirement look like for you? Like I'm doing it right now. I mean, I put in long hours, but like if I could do anything, this is what I would be doing. Like we're having fun. We're working to help spread financial education. We're helping people change their money habits. Like I enjoy what I do. I don't, if I did something else, I'd probably end up in the same place that I am right now, like just doing the same stuff. So there's got to be an excitement level to it as well, especially if it's a business. And then anything that's 100% passive is probably not going to work.
Hi there, guys. I wanted to take a quick moment just to introduce you to my one-to-one coaching. It's something that I deeply love doing. As you can tell, conscious conversation is such a massive part of my life. And having one-to-one, deep, meaningful conversations with people where I get to show up as your brother or as the coach or as your mentor has been such a gift for me personally, and a gift for lots of the people that I have supported on the journey of living a more spiritually empowered, spiritually powered, spiritually aligned life. You don't have to take my word for it. Here's some examples of people all around the world that have experienced profound transformations through this coaching experience.
Amrit is a fantastic coach.
In a few sessions, he got to a depth that I'd only experienced before working with certain medicines.
He's gone through a lot of the struggles that you're probably facing, and Amrit's been a really strong, supportive figure in my journey.
In control of myself.
I'm kinder to myself.
I actually have that vision and a purpose.
I do feel like I'm a better version of myself already.
Amazing energy.
He was easy to talk to, which made me easy to trust him.
Working with Amrit at 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning, and really I was bouncing out of bed.
Whenever I get off the calls with Amrit, best money we've ever spent.
I would not recommend him because I don't want everyone to know about him, and then I won't be able to book him. If he gets too busy, I won't get my turn.
I would say absolutely.
There's no way you can work with Amrit for a period of time without being transformed.
So if you're considering him as a coach, do not hesitate, because you won't be disappointed.
Alrighty, so hopefully that's inspiring your evolution onwards and upwards. And if you are so inspired to evolve, you can book in a one-to-one call with me directly at www.amrit.coach/life. And guys, if I can say so myself, I do think this is something quite special. Most people that I see building things online don't really work with people this deeply, this intimately, one-on-one as things start to grow, just because it is so time intensive. And yet I'm so deeply passionate about the transformation that comes from one-to-one coaching that just isn't available anywhere else. It would be my absolute honor and a pleasure to support your spiritual awakening, your spiritual path, your spiritual unfoldment. It is my life's work. I look forward to seeing you in the call. Back to today's podcast. Following your work as well, because I think many people, or not everybody, are familiar with those 4 quadrants that Robert Kiyosaki sort of, Rich Dad, Poor Dad really made famous for a lot of people, or really, popularized for a lot of people, I should say. But I think most people, and I found myself doing this, and I'm still kind of in this as well with the Inspired Evolution. You kind of go from, hey, I had a job to, having a business, but you're not really a business owner. You're like managing yourself within your own job. But then also realizing through your content that you can actually have a job and be an investor at the same time, and that it's not like a linear path through the quadrants. That was really powerful to take away. And also, yeah, in that maybe we can tuck into a little bit, because you mentioned ETFs and index funds, and I think that's really interesting, because real estate, more and more, I feel like there's a bit of a barrier to entry where you actually have to have a certain level of deposit, at least for your first property. Then we can, there's equity and stuff that exists. But I think ETFs and index funds, like there's very little barrier to entry, correct?
Yeah. And so I think you made a very excellent point about now, what's the difference between having a lifestyle brand and then having a real business? And I've kind of dealt with that same dilemma. So with Minority Mindset, it's my personal brand, but it's not a business. It makes good money, but it's not a business. If I were to die tomorrow, that business would stop, because now I'm not making videos. That's not what a business really is. Now, it can make good money, it could fund a great lifestyle, but now we really have to think, how do you build something that can outlast yourself? That's where the real wealth is built. Now, there's a few ways that you can go about doing this, and let's make the numbers big to make it a little bit more fun. Let's assume that you're a content creator and you're making $1 million a year. There's a few things that you could do. Option number one is what many people do, and I have seen this so many times. You make $1 million a year, and now you live the $1 million a year lifestyle. You got the fancy cars, you're flying on fancy vacation, going on fancy vacations, you got the nice big home, you're going out to eat. I mean, you are spending $1 million a year, if not more, because you want to show it off on Instagram that you are rich, and you want to demonstrate to everybody, all of your followers, that you are rich and wealthy, because that's why they follow you. So you created this whole persona, and now you got to live it. That's option number one. And from a financial perspective, if your brand gets demonetized, if you stop creating content, you are done. You have a lot of expenses, no income to support it. So that is not a smart financial thing to do. Option number two is you make $1 million a year, and now you live off of, let's call it 10%, just to keep it fun. You're living off of $100,000 a year, and then you take the other $900,000 and you invest that, whether it's real estate, whether it's ETFs, whether it's stocks. That way now you build this asset, and let's just assume, for the sake of this example, that you can generate 5% a year in cash flow, which is definitely achievable. Now, that means you're going to be generating about $45,000 a year in cash flow for every year that you put in $900,000. That means if you do this for just a little bit over 2 years, now you're living off $100,000 from your content creation, but now you're also making $100,000 from your passive investments. Now you have real freedom. If you stop making the content, well, you can live off of these investments, and now you have the option to be a lot more free and kind of decide how you want to invest and how you want to use your money. You can continue investing your money. You can start spending twice as much and not really see any difference in your lifestyle because you're still investing the same amount of money that you're bringing in. So that's option two. Option three is the most risky, but the most potential upside is now you're making $1 million a year as a content creator. And instead of going out and buying real estate or stocks and ETFs, you start investing it into a business idea. Something that is a real business that does not necessarily involve you. Maybe you are a content creator that is focused on, we'll call it life coaching, and you create a journal, a physical journal that people can use. You charge $50 for it. And sure, you are, the big promoter of it in the beginning, but it doesn't need you because you can have a manufacturer that builds the journal. You can have a marketing department that's running advertisements to sell this journal. You're the person that's bringing the initial sales because you're going to talk about it on your channel. You're going to promote it. You're going to bring the initial revenue in for the business. But as this business makes money, now you can start to grow without you. It's almost like that money you invested is the venture capital, the angel investor dollars. But you get to keep 100% of the equity because you're funding it from your content creation. Now, if you can continue growing that, you're essentially the CEO of the company. You're working to grow this that way. Now you can start to sell it to everybody, not people that are on your audience. Now you've built a whole business and you can hire a new CEO. You can sell the business. You can do whatever you want with it. The risk is your journal sucks. Nobody wants to buy it. So you dump a lot of money into it. Now you have a bankrupted business. But the nice thing is you learn. And then you say, you know what? Maybe people didn't want a journal. They want a meditation app. They want a meditation something. They want something else. They want mugs, right? I'm just thinking off the top of my head here. And now you've learned, and now you can do it all over again because that audience is still there, your personal brand, so you can test and try things and use the revenue from your business, from your personal brand to fund the real brand. And that's the real question of what's right for you. Building the business has the most upside, but also the most risk. Investing your money into stocks and real estate has good upside, but less risk. Blowing the money has no upside, but you get to get a lot of likes on Instagram.
Thank you so much for clarifying that out. And I can also see that if you were, and I like how even earlier in the conversation you distilled out, investment for growth versus investment for cash flow. I think that is really where the power of the model really starts to step in, when people start to really realize that actually cash flow is a whole different investment strategy to growth, because that's what empowers these three versions that you're describing. And yeah, some great ideas even in there just for myself to go explore in terms of in terms of businessing as a life coach business. One of the questions that I've got rattling around in there is the fact that there's so much, like, do you feel like you're doing, yeah, it's a bit Sikh in its nature, because the word that's sort of wrapping its head around, like, word in my head is kirt karni, which for those that tuning into the podcast probably don't understand what that means, because not all of you are Punjabi and Sikh and speak Punjabi. But there's this concept of kirt in our faith, which is like you've got to earn your keep, right? And you've always got to get out and make sure that you're toiling, you're the farmer, then you're toiling the land. And I think when we come to investment, there are connotations of where it feels like it's not as hard worky, and I think so many people feel like hard work, and I'm putting that in apostrophes for those that are just listening into air apostrophes that are only listening to the audio. But the concept of hard work versus smart work and everything you're evangelizing, I feel, is it still lines up to kirt, which is like working for your toil, but it's actually working smarter for your money, as opposed to working, like, you do have to work hard, but then how long are you going to work hard for? Do you know what I mean? And that's something that I've had to take away, because I think we've all seen the stereotype example of people that worked really hard, but then in the end also worked themselves into the ground, as opposed to those people that worked hard and then also, just a little bit of smarts were applied, not a whole lot at times, but then actually that changed a lot of how they lived out what they call the golden years of their life as well. And it doesn't have to be that later down the track.
Yeah, and I think, there's so many different ways to take that. What is that? Kirt karo, kirt karni, what does that mean? It means earn an honest living. And so if your goal is to earn an honest living, there's so many ways that we can kind of skin that same question. So if we look at content creation, if I make a video today, I publish it, and then 12 months later it goes viral and it makes $10,000, was that a hard work? I mean, I didn't have to do anything. Then it's just YouTube algorithm took it and then it made this money. So, there's so many different ways to ask that same question. And what I like to talk about in our financial education when it comes to your investments is I talk about this triangle, that there are three things you have to think about when you make an investment. Number one, does it make financial sense? Is this something that's going to make money? Question number two, does this make legal sense? Is it legally allowed, or is this an illegal thing? Number three is, does it make moral sense? And this one has a much more subjective dial based off of your moral code, because your moral code is different than mine. And every single listener and viewer has a very different moral code. And so, for example, one of the things that we talked about, we did a research report on the gambling industry, because sports betting has been becoming much more popular. It's been more legalized in the United States. And showed the financial opportunity here. I don't want to invest in that because I don't believe in that. It doesn't fit within my moral code. It's legal. It's financially, there's opportunity here, but it just doesn't make sense for me. Likewise, I have had a lot of opportunity to invest in buy now, pay later startups. Buy now, pay later is one of the fastest growing industries within fintech in the United States, which is essentially you can buy whatever you want on the internet, pay for it later. I like to call that broke now, broke later. It's against my beliefs. It's not something I want to invest in, but I'm sure it's good for other people. And so you have to understand what is a good investment doesn't mean it's a good investment for you. Just because something is a good investment doesn't mean it's a good investment for you. And you have to be able to define what is a good investment for you. And if you could do things that you are in alignment with morally, that's legal, that makes financial sense, well, then I don't think you're going to feel as bad about it because you're investing in things that you believe in.
Jaspreet, is it too far to ask you this question? Do you feel like you're doing God's work in the education that you're delivering to people?
No, absolutely not. I think I'm just trying to help people in my own way. I think that is a little bit too righteous. Look, all I try to do is do the best that I can, help people be better with money, and do the best that I can. We try to serve people every day, but I am definitely no perfect person, and I never try to put myself out like that. We try to improve ourselves every day, try to help people every day, but I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done.
And the fear of stepping into investment and wealth creation there, I think for some people it becomes intimidating when, where, how. What does Market Briefs actually help them with in terms of their investments and where to begin?
So Market Briefs is a free newsletter that breaks down what's happening in the markets. You can read it in 5 minutes every morning, and it breaks down what's happening in the economy, the stock market, the crypto market, the real estate market, and the global economy into a fun newsletter, easy to understand, it's witty, it's sarcastic. That way, somebody who didn't grow up with a financial background can understand what the people on Wall Street understand, what the people in the financial markets understand, just so you know what's happening in the markets. That's what Market Briefs is. Then for people that want to be a little bit more sophisticated, want to be more involved, we also have a research newsletter called Market Briefs Pro. This one is paid, where my team is identifying the financial trends in the markets, where they're studying how are spending habits changing in the economy. Where does this create a potential investment opportunity? We're not giving you stock picks. We're just giving the research of helping you understand how things are changing in the economy. So for people that are investors in the stock market, we can help shorten your research curve. And then we also have a Briefs Academy, which is our education platform to help teach the basics of money management, stock market investing, real estate investing. How do you read a financial statement? How do you underwrite a real estate investment deal? So we're really trying to provide that 360 financial education, understanding what's happening in the financial markets, but also the trends in the financial markets through everything that we do here at Briefs Media.
I love that. And I'll put links to all of that in the show notes and the description below for everybody to access. And one of the questions I had coming into today that didn't sort of dovetail into any point in the conversation, but I can't let you go without asking, is money an illusion? And yeah, because I hear this bandied around a little bit. Money, it's an illusion. It's not, it is. Yeah, your thoughts on, is money an illusion?
Money, at the end of the day, we got to define what this money is, okay? Because there's money, which is the paper currency that we have, and then there's money, which is real money. Our paper currency, and I might be getting a little bit too technical for this simple question, but our paper currency, the $100 bill that we have, if you were to be asked, how much is the $100 bill worth? The answer is, it depends. Because the $100 is going to buy you way less things today than it would have 10 years ago. But it's going to buy you more things today than it will in 10 years. So based off of that fact, that money is just kind of a made-up thing. But that money can be transformed into something. That money can be transformed into a home. It can be transformed into a car. It can be transformed into a vacation. And it can be transformed into freedom. Every single person uses money. It costs money to eat, and it costs money to feed other people. You have to understand how money works. That way you can be one of the people that understands how to build wealth instead of being the person that's just stuck in the system. And it starts with the financial education, of paying attention, then learning, then doing, then failing, then trying again.
Yeah, I think also in that space, I think a lot of people tuning into this podcast, the expectation was at some point that money was backed by gold and that it no longer is, and it became uncoupled. And is that just a consequence of the world population growing and that, that maybe there wasn't enough gold going around? Like, what happened there?
Well, this might get a little bit too kind of technical into things, but the United States dollar used to be backed by gold. In 1971, the then president, Richard Nixon, was facing a lot of debts. And the government didn't have the ability to just print more money because it needed more gold to justify printing more money. And so we were in a situation where the government had a lot of debt they needed to pay back, but they didn't have the money to pay it back. So President Richard Nixon took the dollar off of the gold standard. He said temporarily, we haven't gone back on the gold standard. That way, the government could then print more money and pay off all their debts. Imagine that. You have a whole bunch of debts. You have a credit card, your student loans, you have your mortgage. You can't pay it back, so you just print a whole bunch of money, then you pay everybody off. That's what happened, which then created more inflation, like we've been talking about. And so that's the system that we live in, where our paper dollars are just paper dollars.
Yeah, I think that's important for people to recognize at some point as well, because, yeah, especially when you start recognizing that some people, the financial stress is a real thing. And again, just pointing people back to Market Briefs and all the education that's there, and even just, I don't say just minority mindset. Like I said, 2 million people now subscribe to the channel, or almost, downloading the wisdom of, just the importance of financial wealth, so that, it isn't, maybe it is an illusion, maybe it's not backed by something as tangible as gold, but it is, it is an energy that's transacting around the world, and it is abundant. Touch wood, if you can, just bring yourself to it, and there's a lot of money out there, bringing yourself to that and availing it. And I think just one of the things before I let you go, I had this, and maybe this belongs in the after the show segment, but this, I think there was a point somewhere where you were considering, or one of your managers was like, Jaspreet, you should buy a G-Wagon, because it's a heavy vehicle, and you can totally find get1.com, and it might be good for the brand. But there was also a point where you were running late to a meeting, and I think, was it like your car was, you were driving like a very average sort of car, and it was broken. And it's like, just the expectations, I think, of like what people imagine wealth, finance, and creation looks like, just in your own stereotypical sort of example, and then also sort of breaking the stereotype. Can you do that for us just really quickly? Yeah.
Yeah. So on that second point, up until this month, 2 days ago, I was driving around in a car worth $500. And so my car had no bumper. It had 3 different types of rims on it. The engine was really loud. It was just in really rough shape. And earlier this week, I bought myself a new Toyota RAV4, because that car was it was on its last leg.
It had finally had its day.
It had its day. So I got a RAV4 earlier this week. And look, for me, my goal isn't to just buy things to show off. My goal is really to just build wealth and make the impact. That's more important to me right now. Building the brand, building the team, building the assets. I'm sure I'll buy a nicer car at some point, but right now that's my top focus is just building everything else right now, and then the fun stuff. Look, I live by the values that I teach. Make the sacrifices first, build the wealth first. I've been very fortunate to build wealth, but I really want to build the brand. I want to help spread the mission, and that's where my money has been going.
And I think that's, by far and large, there's a lot of places you can get education online, but rather the embodiment of the values and the way you teach them is, speaks volumes in the way that we receive your content online. Like I said, I'll put a link to Minority Mindset in the description, the show notes below, Market Briefs, and access to the free newsletter in the comments below. In the show notes in the description below. Jaspreet, brother, I want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing your insights and your wisdom with us as usual. But man, thank you so much for your time, definitely. And yet, even today's conversation, I've been listening to you for 5+ years online, and just
Thank you, bro.
So many different pieces of content to guide. So, like, when I bought my first home, and like now, like investing in shit, like there's so many bits of content in there, and you've been so supportive of my journey. And as a life coach supporting others, I'm sure that has trickled in at different points for people that I've supported. So, yeah, I think today's conversation stands a lot on the shoulders of the person that, you've sort of carved out yourself to be in the world as well. And I'm just really grateful to have a money mentor in many ways that is so in alignment with their own values, and so happy to stand in them with such integrity, and guiding the way forward that, yeah, it becomes really easy to buy financial education from, even if it's just freely online. So really grateful for you, brother. Thank you so much for not just what you do, but how you do it.
Thank you, bro. Thank you, my friend. It was such an honor to be here. Keep up the good work. Keep up the good things that keep spreading the mission, man. I really appreciate it being on, and I love to see what you're doing, man. You're doing big things.
Touch me. Inspired soul, you've made it through to the end of another episode. On screen shortly are going to be a couple more episodes for you to dive in even deeper into money, mindset, spirituality. One of my favorite conversations around money and mindset was actually with Ken Honda as well. He talks about happy money and how energetically your money might be communicating certain things to you. That will be on screen shortly, along with another couple of episodes for you to continue your inspirations to evolve. Now, just a friendly reminder, everything you see here around the Inspired Evolution, you're loving content like this, you've made it through to the end of another episode, is powered and empowered by your subscription to this channel. So if you can take a moment, please do hit subscribe. It helps with everything that we're creating. And to all of you that are subscribed, thank you so much for your incredible love and support. I can't tell you just what it means to be a creator, Touchwood, waking up to be able to support you with this content and these videos coming out on the regular. It's all powered by your subscription to the channel. So thank you so much for your love and support. On screen, Ken Honda, Money Mindset, and also another couple of videos for you to go in even deeper to your inspirations to evolve. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one.